The fear of death is not waiting for you at the end of your life. It is already running your life right now. Every status game you play, every relationship you cling to, every moment you feel that low level dread for no obvious reason, that is death anxiety in disguise. Once you see the mechanism, you can stop being controlled by it. In this video, I'll show you number one, why what you're calling fear of death is actually fear of something else entirely, and why that distinction changes everything. Number two, the Vedic map of the self that makes death anxiety lose its grip, backed by what modern psychology has confirmed about how this works. Number three, a concrete daily practice that interrupts the death anxiety loop before it hijacks your ordinary moments. Let's get into it. A man named David wrote in a comment that stopped me cold. He said, I don't fear death itself. I just fear it will come before I'm okay with it coming. Read that twice. He's not afraid of non existence. He's afraid of being caught unprepared, unfinished, still becoming. That comment has thousands of likes, which tells you something important. Most people who say they've made peace with death haven't. They've just gotten better at not thinking about it. This video is for David and for everyone who recognized themselves in what he wrote. Psychologists have a term for what David described. Terror management theory, developed in the 1980s by Jeff Greenberg and his colleagues, makes a striking claim. Most of human behavior is secretly organized around one goal, avoiding the awareness of death, not death itself, the awareness of it. The research is genuinely unsettling. When researchers remind people of their own mortality, even subtly, even just by having them walk past a funeral home, those people immediately become more tribal, more defensive of their worldview, more hostile to anyone who threatens their sense of meaning. Status seeking spikes, generosity toward outsiders drops, the ego doubles down on everything that makes it feel permanent and significant. What the researchers found is that humans have built an entire civilization of symbolic immortality projects, career achievement, legacy, fame, ideology, tribe. These aren't just things we want, they are, at the neurological level, death shields, ways of feeling like something about us will persist. Now, here is where the Vedic tradition walks in and says something that no therapy manual and no TED talk has quite said. What you're calling fear of death is not actually fear of death. It is fear of ego dissolution. Think about what you're really imagining when you picture your own death. You're imagining the end of the story you call me, the memories, the relationships, the projects, the reputation, the continuity of experience. The ego is a narrative, and the ego knows it is fragile. That terror you feel is the narrative panicking about its own impermanence. The Bhagavad Gita makes a distinction that most Western frameworks don't even have language for. It separates what it calls the Atman, the witness self, from the Ahamkara, the ego construct, the I am this body, this name, this story identity. The Gita's argument is not that death is painless or that you should stop caring about your life. The argument is that the thing doing the fearing is not the thing that dies. Sankhya philosophy, one of the oldest systematic frameworks in the Vedic tradition, describes the self as Sakshi, the witness, the one who observes thoughts, not the thoughts themselves, observes sensations, not the body producing them. The witness has never been born in the way a body is born, and it does not die in the way a body dies. This is not a religious claim you have to take on faith. Sit quietly for 30 seconds and notice who is watching your thoughts right now. Whatever you observe, a thought, a feeling, a sensation, you are not that. You are the one noticing it. That noticing quality, that bare awareness, is what the Vedic tradition calls the real self, and it has never once been threatened by anything. The takeaway from this section is simple, but it requires sitting with it. The fear is real, but the entity the fear is protecting is a construction, not worthless, not fake, but constructed. And constructions can be seen through. In the 1970s, a psychiatrist named Irvin Yalom began doing something unusual. Instead of helping his patients avoid thinking about death, he made them confront it directly. He worked with terminally ill patients with people who had received life threatening diagnoses, and what he found reversed what most therapists expected. People who faced their mortality head on did not collapse. They woke up. Trivial anxieties fell away. Relationships deepened. The compulsive need to perform and achieve and accumulate softened. Yalom called this the awakening experience, the paradox that the thing we most avoid is the thing that, when faced, produces the most freedom. The Katha Upanishad, one of the oldest texts in the Vedic canon, is structured as a conversation between a young man named Nachiketa and Yama, the lord of death himself. Nachiketa literally travels to the realm of death and asks what happens to a person after they die. Yama tries 3 times to distract him with wealth, pleasure, and power. Nachiketa refuses all of it. He says, "Tell me the truth about the self." What Yama teaches him is the same thing Yalom's patients discovered experientially. The self, that you are most fundamentally, is not a product of the body. It does not begin when the body begins. It does not end when the body ends. The Gita puts it this way: weapons cannot cut it, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it, wind cannot dry it. It is not that the self is invulnerable in some magical sense. It is that the self is not the kind of thing that can be threatened by physical processes. Now, modern consciousness research has started mapping this same territory from a different angle. Near death experience studies, including the AWARE study run by cardiologist Sam Pania, have documented cases of verifiable perception occurring when the brain shows no measurable activity. Stanislav Grof's decades of research with holotropic breathwork documented consistent reports of what he called transpersonal states, experiences of awareness that seem to extend beyond the individual body. None of this is proof of anything in the hard scientific sense, but it fills a gap that neither pure materialism nor traditional religion has adequately addressed: the question of what consciousness actually is, and whether it is identical to brain function or something the brain participates in. The Vedic framework offers what might be the most intellectually honest position available. It says consciousness is primary, not secondary. The body and brain are instruments through which awareness expresses itself, not the source of awareness. Death, in this view, is the instrument being set down, not the musician ending. Yalom's clinical work and the Vedic philosophical tradition arrived at the same prescription from opposite directions. Don't manage the fear. Don't bypass it with motivational thinking. Go straight into it. Examine what is actually afraid. And when you look closely, you find that the witness doing the examining has never once been in danger. This is what the research calls post traumatic growth, and what the Gita calls jnana, direct knowledge, not belief, not hope, knowledge that comes from looking. One of the most common things I hear, and it shows up in comments almost word for word, is this: I don't fear dying. I just fear not being able to experience anything anymore. The feeling of not being able to feel anything sends chills down my spine. That is precise. That is the ego describing its own worst nightmare: total sensory and experiential shutdown. But notice what that statement reveals. The fear is not of some future event. It is happening right now, in this moment, as a thought. The suffering is present tense, which means the intervention point is also present tense. Prabhupada, commenting on the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, makes a point that sounds simple until you sit with it. He says the person who has identified themselves with their body will inevitably suffer, because the body is always changing, always decaying, always moving toward dissolution. But the person who has even a partial understanding that they are the witness and not the body begins to loosen that suffering at its root, not through willpower, not through positive thinking, through correct identification. The practice that comes out of this is what I'd call the witness reset. It takes about 90 seconds and you can do it anywhere. Step 1: when you notice death anxiety arising, whether it's a flash of dread at 2 a.m., or a wave of panic triggered by a news story about illness, or that low level background hum of existential unease, don't try to argue with it or push it away. Instead, shift your attention to the one who is noticing the anxiety, not the anxiety itself, the awareness that is watching the anxiety. Step 2: ask one question: is this awareness afraid? not am I afraid. Ask whether the witnessing quality itself, the bare noticing, is threatened by what it's observing. You will find every time that it is not. The awareness is untouched. The anxiety is a weather pattern passing through a sky that has never moved. Step 3, stay there for 30 seconds. Don't analyze, don't conclude, don't make a philosophy out of it. Just rest in the noticing. This is what the Upanishads call nididhyasana, sustained contemplation of the self. And this is what Yalom's patients stumbled into when they stopped running from mortality and turned to face it. This practice does not make death abstract or theoretical. It does not bypass grief or the very real fear of suffering, which is its own separate and legitimate concern. What it does is pull the rug out from under the specific terror that the self will cease. Because every time you locate the witness, you find something that has not yet been touched by anything the world has thrown at it. Not once. The Vedic tradition calls this abhaya, fearlessness, not the absence of sensation or challenge. Fearlessness as a ground state, a quality of the self that was always there, underneath the noise. Overcoming fear of death in this framework is not something you achieve, it is something you uncover. That 90-second practice is a starting point. But for most people, one of two things happens. Either the anxiety comes back harder and they don't know what to do with it, or they get a taste of the witness state and have no idea how to build on it. If you've tried sitting with this on your own and you're still getting hijacked by the loop, the fastest way through is a direct conversation. I offer a free 15 to 30-minute consultation call. No pitch, no agenda, except your situation. You tell me where you're stuck. I tell you exactly what I see and what the next step looks like for you specifically. You walk away with a clear direction, whether we ever work together again or not. The link to book is in the description at dailymindreset.com consultation. If this video landed for you, that call is the natural next move. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video, which goes deeper into the Vedic framework for anxiety that most Western psychology hasn't caught up with yet. What is the specific moment in your daily life when the fear of death hits hardest, and what have you tried so far to work with it?